You're listening to Oh My Health, There Is Hope podcast.
When your heart is aching and your world is shaking, don't give up. No, no, don't give up.
Hello and welcome to Oh My Health, There Is Hope podcast. I'm your host, Jana Short, and today I'm here with Mark and Annette Anderson for part of their Hope series. Mark and Annette have found that living in the moment doesn't need to be looked at as a destination, but more of a journey. Sometimes that journey takes a few unexpected detours and turns, and how we react to our life is a choice. While we can't always control what happens to or around us, we can control the direction we choose to follow. Their goal is to inspire, grow, and connect. Mark and Annette believe we grow by gaining clarity while accepting that life's less than perfect moments can be defining moments of learning. They believe we can all find joy in life's journey. Our journeys are often difficult, sometimes unbelievable, but always fulfilling. I love your guys' intro. I think you're amazing. And I'm so glad we're here for part 2 of your Hope series. And I'm just going to let you guys dig into it.
Well, thank you, Jana, for inviting us to be a part of your show.
I love having you guys. I get so much feedback from you. So just so you know, I get a lot of feedback when you guys are on. So yay.
Hopefully it's good feedback.
Always, I never get negative feedback. And I know that today we're going to talk about some of the zones that you go through in life's journeys. And so I'm going to let you guys start with maybe that.
All right, well, thanks. And it's great to be here with you. We enjoy the interaction. We enjoy the opportunity of being able to share some of the things that we've learned. And one of the things that you mentioned in your introduction there is we don't claim to be experts. But what we do claim is that we do have experience. And through our experience and through the 37 years that we've been married, through the years that we've been on this earth, we've all had experiences and we've all gained growth. We've all gained learning. We've all had fear in our lives there. And with that, and with those zones that we're going to call them there, we have found that if you're not careful and if you're not conscious, it's very easy to stay in one particular zone without the opportunity of growing.
You know, I want to just say one thing about life's experiences and being experts. I feel like I have my PhD in life's experiences. And so, you know, it would be a sad thing to go through life and not learn and progress. Good or bad, to take those experiences and let them propel us forward. And that's what this is all about, is sharing those experiences of fear and learning and progressing in this life.
So let's go back almost a year, Jana. Let's look at what we were doing this time last year. We were in this little bit of a phase of beginning to learn about a pandemic. And it wasn't until March that we really began to see the effects of this pandemic. You know, we thought that perhaps when we were told to stay indoors, it was probably going to be for a week or two until things kind of chilled over. Well, here we are almost a year later. And it's given us a chance to go back and reflect on those things that we have learned. And Annette and I have really spent a lot of time talking. We've talked to people, we've talked to each other. We've reflected on what we've learned and what we've grown from during the last year. And so what we've done is we've compartmentalized this last year into 3 different feelings. The first feeling is the fear zone. Do you remember the fear zone, Annette? Right after we were told we couldn't leave and go anywhere. Do you remember what happened at the grocery stores?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Well, here, I remember people panicking over toilet paper.
Yeah.
We were in Utah, and all of a sudden, you couldn't find a roll of toilet paper on the shelves. And it was kind of hilarious on one end, but the panic and the fear just rose.
You know, we've never been a part of a zombie apocalypse, and I hope that we never are. But I'll tell you what, it sure seemed like that when you went through the parking lots at Costco or any of the grocery stores. We saw people that had fear that showed itself in a very visible way. Not only were people buying everything and anything that they could possibly think of that would supply them for the next 15 years, But they were also, there was also emotions that came from that as well, emotions of fear, emotions of really getting upset easily. I remember talking to a number of colleagues that were told that they couldn't go back to the office for the time being. And by the way, here we are almost a year later, and we still haven't gone back to the office, many of us. And I remember at the time talking to colleagues who were very concerned about the changes that were going to take place in their lives. They were going to have to spend more time at home. What were they going to do to entertain themselves? What were they going to do if they had to be around a spouse or a partner 24/7? And that was a real concern for a lot of people. And so we look at that time, and I hope that none of us are still in that fear zone. It's a zone that it really isn't something that we really want to stay in, because it's very self-defeating.
That fear zone is something that none of us like to be in, like Mark said, but I have found myself in and out, depending on what's been going on around me and whether I'm watching the news a lot or not. But it's okay as long as I don't land there and stay there. And so that's, just a key thing, is to get back out of that fear zone. One of the things, for us that's very different, and I think probably for the majority of us, is that when this all started a year ago, we didn't know many people who had contracted of this virus. And now we know several people.
Well, it used to be that we would ask our neighbors and family members, do you know anybody that's had COVID? And now it's, how many people do you know that have actually passed away from this dreaded disease? And so it's affected all of us one way or another. And there was a lot of fear there. And it really didn't help that we were in an election year. It didn't help that there were other externalities that were a part of what was happening all around us. But the good news is that as we continue to talk to people, not only just in our own community, but through Carrying the Load, our organization, we talk to people from around the world. And we've recognized that the world is a lot closer than it ever was before, because of Zoom meetings, because of technology that we, think about it. The last pandemic that we had, major pandemic, the Spanish flu in 1918, think about how many people perished from that and how many years it took before we really understood the extent of what happened. But there was a fear then as well. My father was born in 1918. I remember him telling stories about his family and the experiences that they had, and how that particular epidemic had a little bit of a different demographic, as it really affected children under the age of 15 more than COVID-19 has.
One of the things today, when we look at these differences and side by side between these two different pandemics, is that fear, but it's also the knowledge and the hope that we have moving forward. And so many people that I talk to now, whether it is through Zoom meetings and virtually through Carrying the Load, or it's my neighbor, we talk about not being paralyzed by the fear. And that, to me, is the saddest part of this whole thing, are those that are paralyzed because of the fear. Because I see many around that are so frightened that they don't leave their home, or they can't do anything, or they have the groceries delivered, but then they leave them in the garage for 3 days because they have to, all these things. And it's like, no, we can be cautious, we can learn, but we don't have to live in fear. That, to me, is where your heart breaks, is if we live in that fear and let fear control us.
We see people in that, go ahead.
I feel like right now you're hitting it right on the head, because the fear going around here is the fear of the vaccine, right? We've been praying for a vaccine, and yet when it comes out, the first response for all of us is fear. Like, is it safe? What's it going to do? Like, it's just craziness. You guys are hitting the nail right on the head today.
Well, so here's what we're saying, is that in the fear zone, we go from fear to learning to growth. And what we've seen here is that even if you're in the growth zone, and we'll discuss what that is in a moment here as well, but sometimes we can go from a growth stage back to the fear again. because you're absolutely right. We were really hoping, we were praying for a vaccine. And now that it's here, there continues to be fear. And part of being in the fear zone is someone that will actually spread emotions that are negative. And that's where we have to be careful, is that we don't spread negative emotions that are unfounded. And, sure, there might be a person or two along the way that we hear a story. And that's what the polarization of the media is doing right now, is we don't hear about the millions of people who have had a positive experience, but we hear about that one or two people who have had a negative experience, and that causes fear itself. And so in that fear stage, it's not all self-imposed. Often it comes as a product of what we hear and what we see in the media.
Which takes me to my own experience. Back a year ago, I was glued to the TV, to the news. I wanted to have the up-to-date information. What did that do to me? My fear skyrocketed because of what I was feeding myself. I had to put limits on what I watched. Not that I didn't want to be informed, but I didn't need to do it 24/7. And so as I learned to balance that education, that fear actually subsided. And when Mark talks about this, fear zone and the learning zone and the growth zone and how it's a little bit fluid, it's like peeling an onion of a layer, or it's like peeling the layer of an onion. And we might go a little bit deeper each time, but we don't stay there as long. We learn, we progress, and we actually end up in a better state than we were before we went back to that zone.
So lest we spend too much time talking about the fear zone, because I believe that most of us are out of that fear zone there. We'll go back a little bit from time to time because of the unknown, but let's talk about the next stage, which would be the learning zone. The learning zone, I think, for a lot of people happened maybe around June, July, and August of last year. One of the things that we had is we had an exotic vacation plan to Hawaii, and we were so excited about that. And obviously, we couldn't do it. So what did we decide to do?
We went to Mount Rushmore.
We chose from Hawaii to North Dakota. I mean, two polar opposites, but at the same time, we felt more comfortable that was a consideration that we could.
Well, one, we couldn't go to Hawaii. I mean, that decision was made for us, but I don't think we would have gone anyway because of the concerns of flying at the time and going there. But we replaced it with another good. We had never been to Mount Rushmore. That was something on a bucket list. And we were able to take an opportunity to learn and grow and have fun.
Yeah, and we did have fun. And so as we're talking about learning, and as we're talking about putting ourselves in a place where we were able to trust in ourselves, trust in the world, trust in others a little bit more, as we became a little bit more informed, all of a sudden, the information that we were subscribing to through the news, it wasn't nearly as doom and gloom as it had been in March and April. And so because of that, we found that the information that we were evaluating came more from, instead of spreading the unknown or the information that we didn't know, we began sharing our thoughts of hope. Our hope is going to increase as the time goes on, and it has increased. There have been times, again, as I mentioned, that we're going to go back and deviate a little bit, but we're able to now in this learning zone to identify our emotions a little bit greater than we were before. We're in a position where we stop compulsively consuming all of this negative information. We saw that the parking lots in the grocery stores were less occupied. We noticed that there were more canned goods back on the shelves again.
One thing in this whole experience, I don't know about you, Jana, and our listeners, if anyone went to the grocery store and couldn't buy a loaf of bread or a gallon of milk, or they waited in line to actually go in the store because they were limiting how many of us went in the store. Again, those were things that brought that fear. But as we've learned and we've progressed, We don't have the run on the groceries. We don't have that fear of being around people. Yes, we're social distancing, we're wearing masks, we're doing those things, but it has allowed us to find ourselves back in this zone of hope. The hope that when I'm in a fear zone, I lose that hope. For too many years of my life, I lived in a fear zone. And I'm so, so grateful that I learned and had experiences that pulled me out of that fear zone, that allowed me to learn and grow and gave me these tools that I needed to experience life in a healthier way, to share with others, to help them have hope, and put us in a position that when this happened, we weren't so unfamiliar with these zones that we didn't know what to do, because we had had those experiences. It's everything we talk about with Care in the Load, sharing life's experiences, helping others through those experiences that we've had and the things that we've learned and grown from.
Do you know what else we've started? We've stopped doing that is we've given up on things we can't control. And I think that that was a hard thing for a lot of people, is to really disassociate themselves with the uncontrollable in their lives. And now we operate and we exist a little bit more on faith than we did before. You know, one of the other things I think we've noticed, and I think is part of the learning zone as well, is that we need to recognize that we're all trying to do the best we can do. You know, no one is trying to spread disinformation, I don't think. I think that we're all doing the best we can do. And, you know, we've got to recognize that people are going to have different opinions. You may have a different opinion on the vaccine or about some of the other medical things that are going on than someone else might have. But it doesn't mean you're right and they're wrong, or that they're right and you're wrong. It just means that we have begun to recognize that we are doing the best we can do. And here's an interesting piece of this that we've noticed as well. My colleagues, for example, that I work with, have gone from I'm very concerned to, hey, it's been a really wonderful thing to be with my partner, to be with my spouse during the last almost 1 year. We've learned some things about ourselves that we could have probably learned no other way.
One of the things that has been most discouraging, and you touched on this, was the anger associated with people's different opinions and that negativity that they would kind of throw it back and forth. And what I have come to prescribe by and love the most, and I think of it as unity, is that we can be unified in purpose of having hope, of getting over this pandemic. We can both have differing opinions, which is wonderful. We're here on earth with different looks, different likes, different experiences and understanding, and we don't want to be the same. We don't want to have this be cookie cutter people. We want to have our own personal experiences and growth. We want to say, I want to learn from this. I love that, Jana, what you just shared with me. I totally believe in that. And I want to incorporate that in my life. But I don't want to be just like you. As amazing as you are, Jana, I don't want to be exactly like you. I want to have that be unique, but I want to have unity as well. I want to support you in everything you do, but I also want that support in my life. And so we can be friends and we can encourage each other, but we don't have to think the same. And I think it's when people think they have to think the same that we also go back to that fear.
But it's a great segue, Annette. Because
one of the things, I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You're fine.
One of the things I wanted to touch on is that you're so right on the money that we're all listening to the same news show. We all receive that information completely different. Like we take our cultures, the way we were raised, our education, the knowledge that we already have, and we're all hearing that exact same message in different ways. And so then when we go out and feed it to our friends, our loved ones, the people that we're sharing with, it's kind of like that telephone, doesn't quite sound the same. So you're absolutely right. We all do hear things in our own unique way. Like I always hear the fun part. If someone's telling me, let's have a party for someone. Yeah, I'm in. Oh yeah, I hear party. And then the work comes, right? We have to prepare for 150 people. And I'm like, what? That's a lot of work. I just heard the fun part. So yeah, I think that we all definitely receive messages in a different way with our own personal uniqueness, which is amazing.
Now, I'm not suggesting that we go off the grid by any means here, but I'm telling you what, the more we listen to the media, I think the more that puts us back sometimes into that fear zone again. And so I think that there's some real balance that if we haven't found it already, it's important. Annette and I have become connoisseurs of Netflix. We love to find a new series that we can sit down and instead of watching an evening news program that has its own slants, we can find a way to divorce ourselves from the pandemic or whatever is going on around us. And so what you're saying, I think, is a great segue into the other zone there, and that's the growth zone. Now, when we talk about these zones, the fear zone, the learning zone, and the growth zone, we're not suggesting that once you get into that growth zone, we're going to put a gold star on your forehead, because we recognize that there are different personalities that are affected different way by the stimulus that is all around us. And so when you think of the growth zone, instead of thinking of the person that is upset with someone else, you remember the news stories, and again, we keep on going back to the news here, but you remember the news stories that would talk about people beating each other up for a loaf of bread? Well, now we're in a zone where we're more empathetic with others as well as ourselves. We find ourselves to be more teachable by what's happening around us. And I love the quote by Gandhi. He said that in a gentle way, we can shake the world. And I think that all of us, I hope at least all of us, are trying in our own way to shake the world to a better degree. It puts us in a position that in a growth mode, we're not afraid of the things that we can't control. We make our talents available to those around us. We wouldn't be sitting here probably in this capacity today if it weren't for the fact that we've learned some very valuable things about ourselves and about others during the last 11 months. I think that we're in a position where we thank others. We're more appreciative of those things around us. We are in a very demand society where we can, if something breaks, what do? We go to the store and we buy something else. Well, we've found that we need to improvise a little bit more, and we've found ways to be able to fix things a little bit more. And that's one of the things that Karen DeLoad is trying to do, is to teach how to fix not only things like kintsugi, like we talked in our last session, but trying to fix ourselves and trying to put ourselves in a position where we can be more not only empathetic with others, but to teach ourselves and to put ourselves in a place where we can accept the fact that we're not always perfect, but we're trying to do our best.
And that it's okay to slip once in a while. I know for me, I was a little bit frustrated with myself just the other day because I felt myself back in this fear zone. And I didn't understand, why am I here? But once I understood and I took the time to just go inside a little bit and to be still and figure out why I was in that fear zone. What can I learn from that fear zone? I was quickly back to this growth zone, but at first I was kind of a little bit upset, like, what haven't I learned? Why am I back here? And then it was this aha moment of, no, this is perfect. I'm progressing. I'm continuing to learn, as opposed to having that frustration. And sometimes when I feel a little bit broken, I feel less than. I feel like maybe because of that brokenness or that fear, I can't be loved. Well, that's the exact opposite of what truth is. Our brokenness allows us to become even more beautiful, even more unique, to be stronger, to be more empathetic, to be able to pay it forward because of all these experiences. And so that allows us to be more lovable, to love more. And it just is this beautiful cycle if we allow it to be.
One of the things that we can do as well is we can do a self-evaluation. We can do a self-inventory. Look at where we're at. Have you written in any journals? Have you done anything that might have been able to allow you to look at how you felt emotionally last March versus where you feel today? And I really believe that you can find your balance if you can look back and realize that, yeah, there has been some growth. I am more empathetic with others. I practice quietude, patience. My relationships are growing. I think those are all part of the things that you can learn if you are in that growth zone.
Wow, this has been a beautiful series, you two. I think that you're amazing. I want you to tell people, this is like a perfect place to end this. I want you to tell people how they can connect with you. How can they work with you? How can they start putting back those pieces and moving through those zones? Because again, it's normal to be fearful. It is normal to be sad. Those are all normal. What's not normal is to live in that space, right? It's there for a reason to move us on to something even better. And so when we recognize that, like you did immediately, why am I back in the zone again? The first thing you did was recognize that you were in that zone. And did your learning, why am I here, so that you could grow out of it. So how can people meet with you so they can start learning this?
Well, thank you. Go to our website. First off, just go right there. It's Karen, and this is where people get confused. It's CAIRN, like the rock Karens, the stack of rocks, theload.com. And we'll have that in the show notes, I'm assuming. And right there, you can also get a free Finding Me workbook. And that is just a way to start off learning a little bit more about ourselves, because I believe that we sometimes get lost and we lose sight of who we are based on goals of things we think we need to accomplish for others, whether it's being a mother or a sister or a caregiver, or a husband or a brother or a son. All those things sometimes pile up, and we lose sight, like I said, of our best selves and who we are. And so this workbook is just a gift from us to you, our listeners, to get to know us a little bit, and some of the resources that we have. There are a lot of other resources on the website, and that's just the first place. We'd also love to have you follow us on Instagram at Karen the Load, or on Facebook. And it's just a great journey to begin with this. And then we have courses and other things, but begin with this free gift of us that we have to have for each of you.
But we are excited about our new course as well. And that's something that we believe that many of our listeners and our followers will find very helpful in creating and putting themselves into more of a growth zone.
It's been so fun to get the feedback of others as they've gone through this course, and to see and recognize these pieces of who they are, from broken to beautiful, and how they've gone from one point and gone along this journey, and now they see themselves as beautiful, as strong, as incredible human beings that they are.
Well, I feel like last year we were in a season of fear, and this year we're in a season of learning and growth. So this is a perfect thing to gift ourselves to start moving on past that. So I love that, and everything is going to be in the show notes so you guys can easily connect with Mark and Annette. So thank you too.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Oh My Health, There Is Hope podcast. Make sure to visit Jana's website, bestholisticlife.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Google Play, or listen there, so you'll never miss an episode. While you're at it, if you found value in the show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if you simply tell a friend about the show. That'll help too. Let's change the world together, one health expert at a time. Looking forward to seeing you next time.